I think there's no such thing as one school fits all. You have to look at the child. You have to consider their interests, talents. It's my job to actually explain to the parents that sometimes what they want is not necessarily the best thing for the child. And I have now, with the years of work, I have learned maybe not to say it straight away sometimes.
So if you're listening, cherished and dear EducAd tutor, Yuliya has a job for you.
Hello and welcome to the Qualified Tutor Podcast, the podcast that brings you the latest in the world of tutoring, edtech and education, and hopefully inspires in you the big change that each and every one of us is capable of. Qualified Tutor is an industry-leading tutor training organisation and online tutoring community for thousands of tutors around the world. This podcast is the voice of this community, where we aim to hear from tutors, teachers, entrepreneurs, coaches, business experts, students, tutorpreneurs, and more from the world of tutoring about what inspires them every day, how they can help tutors like you, and what they've learnt about tutoring along the way. The question is, what will you learn today?
Welcome, listeners, to the next episode of the Qualified Tutor Podcast. I am delighted to welcome on this week's guest, who is Yuliya Kosko. Now, Yuliya is the co-founder of EducAd Consulting, which is an organisation that provides pretty comprehensive educational advice to parents who are seeking the best education for their child, from primary and secondary school placement, university application, summer schools, and recently COVID impact support. So quite a wide range of services that EducAd offer. Now, alongside this, EducAd also comprises a large network of talented private tutors who provide a tailored education program involving the parents at every step of the way, but always with the child at the centre. That's Yuliya and Ivona's philosophy. Ivona is a co-founder alongside Yuliya of EducAd. But today we're going to be hearing from Yuliya about how she combines these two strands, the educational services and the private tutor network, how she combines these two strands and what her vision is for school placement support in the future. Oof, okay, that's the introduction. Yuliya, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was a very nice introduction.
Not at all. It's always a pleasure researching and learning about the guests that we bring on to the podcast. That's just as fun for me as recording the conversation. So yeah, great to read about EducAd, and we've brought you on today so that we can learn a little bit more about the placement, school student placement program, both that you run, but also more widely, because that's something that we haven't had too much of on the podcast in the past. So you've got a lovely tree and path and park background, virtual background behind you, Yuliya. Looks like a lovely day in your virtual background. I'm sitting here in Berlin, and it's just started feeling like winter properly. There was an enormous gust of wind earlier that almost blew down the tree outside. So I'm kind of huddled up in my bedroom here, and you look like you're out on a lovely sunny day. So Yuliya, I'm going to start with our first question, which is, what is your why as a tutor?
Yes, so I'm from Ukraine originally. I've been in London for 17 years now. I call it my home. I love it here. I love living here, working here. And I initially came to study in a university, as many foreigners do. That's one why, I suppose. I finished my degree, and then I worked I got myself a job in a state primary school in Kingston upon Thames, where I worked with children who don't speak English as a first language, so with EIL children, English as additional language speakers. And initially it started off as just helping them settling into the academic system. And then slowly my role grew into making sure that they are accepted on a social level as well, and then the parents are accepted. So we kind of developed the welcome package, and then it grew into bringing multiculturalism to the school where I worked at. And so we partnered with my school that I used to go to when I was younger in Ukraine, and we had a teacher coming in to our school here for like practice exchange, and we had some projects between children, and that is all pre-COVID, right? So we didn't have like video streaming was a huge thing then. Mm-hmm. So all of that was really interesting and really kind of made me, and actually back in university, my dissertation was on bilingualism. So all of that, plus my background as well, coming to a new country, the language that is not my own, made me closer to the pains and gains, let's put it that way, of expats, expat families or children who are born here to foreign families, and they still feel like, okay, what's going on, this mix of cultures and languages and stuff. So then after having my second child, I couldn't keep up, honest answer, with the load of work that's required from school, which I really admire how some people cope with full-time jobs in the primary school and children and finding balance and all of that, because it's a lot of work and the working hours are crazy. So I left, and when I was still working, obviously, because, it's quite unusual, I suppose, for a Ukrainian to be a primary school teacher teaching English children in a way. So I was getting lots of I was asked for lots of help, or from lots of people for help with either to explain the system generally, or because there's lots of differences. One of the biggest one was like, okay, so my daughter is 5 now, when does she start school, or when does she go into year 5? Because in Ukraine, I used to go to school at 7. So, lots of things that are different and confuse people. And very organically, and at the time also my oldest son was finishing primary school, state school, and he was sitting through 11 plus exams into academic selective private schools in London. Southwest particularly is a big thing. It's a bit over kind of rated, I think, the whole
right. Yeah.
Exactly. So all of that kind of organically, and being friends with Ivona, we are very good friends since before we started our own business. Her children went through a similar thing, and she was always into education and finding things out and things like that, and helping people. So very organically, it grew into paid service of consultations, then 11 plus assessments. I was doing them myself, or we would hire a hall and have a group of children invited for a mock exam. And then people would ask us, okay, which school should we go to? So we would do a school placement or search, let's say initially in London. And then again, very organically, it grew into boarding schools, universities. And as we were preparing them for schools, we would do the initial assessment, which I think is very important, because I think there's no such thing as one school fits all. You have to look at the child. You have to consider their interests, talents, and highly selective school is not necessarily the best school for everyone, and vice versa. There are some children who are very academically talented, and maybe it's not noticed, and parents wouldn't go for highly selective schools. So it's always good to start with the chat, with the formal academic assessment, and then we would have an idea of where to place the children and suggest and do the whole service, go with them to open days, sometimes for the language barrier, sometimes for just the comfort, sometimes for, again, cultural differences, explanations and things like that. And then again, organically, very naturally, people started asking us, okay, well, we want to prepare for those exams. So instead of just telling them, okay, this is where your child is now, we think they need to do this, and we would recommend books, we would recommend, there were some online resources even back then, but we didn't have tutors as such. So very, naturally, we started looking for tutors. Or first, it was actually recommending the tutors that used to tutor our children to get into secondary school. And to be honest, I don't promote tutoring as such at all. I don't think it's something that on a very long basis, because sometimes people become so enthusiastic about it that they keep those tutors for almost the whole the whole secondary education, or from year 3 to onwards. I think there has to be a clear target about what you're trying to achieve. So then we wanted to work with tutors who share our vision, who share our perspective, and to whom we can explain what kind of a family it is, because we're not a big agency. We don't advertise online. All our clients are word of mouth, come to us through word of mouth, or friends or family or friends, etc. So we wanted to build the team of people who share our vision of high quality, very niche, very targeted approach to families who might have questions that maybe you're not necessarily used to, or are flexible because of moving around, or all this kind of avatar of our client that had to be met in a way. And our children were heavily involved into having trial lessons with all of our tutors, because that would be the best way for us to see what it is like from the client's perspective. I
think I think there's nothing wrong with that at all. I have tutored in the past some of my colleague Julia Silva's children, and I think that it's probably a great way for Julia to see my tutoring style. But I think there's those are one of the great benefits to running a tutoring business and having children, is that you are then opened up to the world of the best tutors out there, including the tutors who work at your agency, to work with your children. I think that's a brilliant kind of synergy there.
And now a word from Diego Mello, CEO of the newly announced lead partners of the Love Tutoring Festival 2, Nudge Education.
We are Nudge Education, a movement of like-minded professionals trying to eradicate chronic disengagement from the face of the education sector, a child at a time, and point every chronically disengaged child towards a life that is worth living. So if you want to find out more, please go to nudgeeducation.co.uk/work with us and get involved with the movement.
But you're just talking there about how you're able to work with, or why you want to work with the best tutors, the tutors who believe in your vision, who share your vision. How do you teach your tutors to manage the parent relationship, but also keep the child at the center of everything?
Yeah. I wouldn't call it teaching them. I think it's obvious, definitely a partnership, but I know what you mean. It's teaching maybe about cultural differences, right? Or about what this particular family wants. So we did have group video calls with the teachers, because we don't have a huge amount of tutors. We're not a tutoring company, so it's not that difficult to organize in a way. Then we have tutor volunteering sometimes to show, like with the COVID, for example, somebody was better at managing online lessons, or for the tutors who are not used to it at all, who were not used to it at all, that was a very valuable kind of experience sharing through an organized meeting with all tutors and discussing some questions that might have come up during the tutoring experience. Sometimes when there's one child who is having lessons with, for example, in math and physics, I would have a meeting with both teachers where we would discuss what this child needs, especially like at A level, right? Not many subjects, so you can really concentrate, and you really need to have deep understanding of what's going on with the grades for the particular subject. So we would have like a meeting between myself, or Ivona would lead it with a math teacher or physics teacher, where we would discuss points of weakness, points of strength. Usually there are things, mechanics or some topics overlap, so they would discuss between each other who covers what, and work in a team. I think communication really is the key to all of it. And like taking all everyone's needs in consideration. Yes, the child is definitely at the center, And it's my job to actually explain to the parents that sometimes what they want is not necessarily the best thing for the child. And I have now, with the years of work, I have learned maybe not to say it straight away sometimes, and just like find a better way of actually leading the parents to that decision themselves, rather than just saying, no, that's not it. It's not like I used to do it, but still, some things, it takes a little bit of a journey to come to the destination where we want them to be.
Just like it takes a little bit of a journey for a tutor to find the right agency or network to be part of. I think it's wonderful that you're expanding that area of your educational services. I think over the pandemic, it was very clear that tutoring could be used and can be used in targeted, focused ways and disciplines to support the child, to support them with kind of any area of their learning that they're struggling with, or that they need catching up with, or really just to boost confidence. I think that's one of the key parts of a tutor's work.
And really, we, some of our tutors became so close to the families, especially younger ones. They would go with them on holidays, on a paid holiday, obviously, but to maintain that level of language. Because we have students also, we've been talking a lot about entry exams and coming to the country, but we have some students who are not coming to the country yet, or they don't know when they will be coming to the country, but they just want, they live in Ukraine or Russia, and they just want to improve their language. And they want a native speaker, or they want math in English. Or we have, over pandemics, developed a few courses like book club and the film club, which is really nice. And usually most of our tutoring is individual, one-to-one approach. But over pandemic, we wanted to make it more social. So we had like 3-4 children in a group. And it was lovely because then they became friends. And then the tutors, were invited to come and maintain that level of learning about culture, about language from a native speaker. And they would, we had one tutor going to Cyprus for 2 weeks. One is invited to Russia. But now, obviously, with the pandemic, it's a bit difficult to organize. But that just shows, I think, how close we all are, and how, I think that is the beauty, really, of a small company who works with the families so close, and for years, you kind of see them grow.
Yeah. Tell us more about those education clubs that you were just mentioning there.
Little group clubs. So we basically, it started off with because a lot moved to online 2 years ago, nearly 2 years ago, yes. And then I had this idea, because I used to have a book club at home with friends. And I was thinking, that would be so nice. Shall we move it online? I tried to do it, to move it online a few times with a group of friends. That didn't work out. And then I just thought, okay, that would be great actually for the kids. So we then came up, found a tutor, obviously, who has been already working for us, who was interested in it. So we came up with a few titles that we want to cover, had a group talk with her, came up with 5-session lesson plans. And the idea is basically that now it's done individually mainly, but it started off as a group session with 3 to 5 children. We had one for 7-8-year-olds, and then we had for 9-10 kind of, and then a few 13-14-year-olds, where we would suggest the book. They would all obtain a copy, and then they would read a little bit out loud just to hear the reading. And obviously it's all done online on the platform. If there is an unknown word, they would describe it in English, or look up into the dictionary, or through Google, or through Google Images, if it's something that is harder to identify, describe, or find, or no time for it. And then they would have a discussion and some little homework and a written task over it, either to describe a character, to build up those creative writing skills, basically. And then over a period of 4 or 5 weeks, they would have completed the book, and then they can move on to the next one. And the children who were sitting 11 plus, then in a year or 2 years' time, it really helped them so much, because it helped with the group interviews that they were later taking. It helped with, obviously, just having the knowledge of lots of books. And, they always had an answer. Which book have you read recently, or what is your favorite book? And they read some classics, but also they read some fun books as well. And then there was a similar one about film club. So they were watching the series of unfortunate events. And then there was a science club with it was a bit difficult to convince parents to buy the material for the experiments. But we didn't go too crazy with it, but still. So there was a series of five sessions of science club. Then we had one for the children for personal statement writing for university applications. What else did we have? Yeah, well, actually, that one was very popular. Personal finances. So math that is practical and that helps you decide whether to buy a PlayStation with zero interest over 6 months or upfront on the sale, or how to invest money for all the children. There was economics classes about shares and economics and introduction to economics for those who were considering for A levels. There's still lots of ideas which we haven't implemented yet, so working on it.
Okay, so maybe that can give us a little insight into the area I wanted to look into next, really, which was what's next for EducAd. You say that you'd like to explore a few more of these clubs and selling these kind of course bundles. What's next for you guys?
Yeah, to be honest, I can give you a few points in our plans that we have set already, but I'm confident that there will be so many other things coming up in the next couple of years. And that's what's so exciting about my job as well, is because we work so close with families, and a lot of our services have come up on requests in a way from the families. So one of them, for example, mentoring for day students that we do now. So everybody is familiar with guardianship for boarding students. Yes, we also have mentoring for boarding students, where it's almost like a personal tutor who answers to the parents. So it's a person who works between the parents and the school, but also makes sure that the child is, and quite often not quite often actually, in this case, all the time, it's English and Russian speaker. So it would be a person who could explain differences in culture, differences in system, differences in even how to read the school report. And, from little things to big things, meet them at the airport and make them feel welcome, take them to a theater, for example, during the half term and things like that. But also it started off as a request from one parent that they wanted somebody like that for a day student. So the family was here. Mom actually spoke English fluently, but she couldn't pick up. Anyone who has children, especially in private schools in London, would know how many emails you get per week. I mean, I can barely keep up with mine. And I would really like to actually pay someone and just tell me at the end of the day or at the end of the week, okay, this is urgent. This is the form. And I will fill it up for you. And on Saturday, please don't forget the bottle of water, or you need this.
Well, virtual assistants and executive assistants do exist, Yuliya, if you'd like.
With the background as a tutor who could also then pick up any academics issues.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's amazing how much you can delve into your own tutoring network to find individuals like that, especially if they really truly believe in the mission of EducAd. So if you're listening, cherished and dear EducAd tutor, Yuliya has a job for you. So reach out. Now, just to finish here, Yuliya, I'm gonna fire a question at you that you probably aren't expecting. So if it catches you by surprise, then don't worry. But what's next for you personally? What's next for Yuliya Kosko?
What's next for me personally? Well, a lot of my life is around my work. So I won't lie, partially I enjoy it. Not partially, a big part of it is really because of the people I get to meet. So, like I just came back from Moscow in October. I met some clients that I have been working with for 2-3 years. I have never met them in person before. And then the people they introduce you to. And yeah, a lot of it is around, a lot of them become friends. They really become close people and friends, and they meet my children. And like a few weeks ago, we had apple pie at my place with one of the tutors and the sixth former who was in London for EducAd weekends. So again, I don't know, but I'm very open.
That's really heartwarming to hear. I really like the idea that you grow your personal network of friends and colleagues through the work that you do. I think that's such a warming part and such a symbol and reflection of education being this core part of a family's life and a family's kind of existence. Here's to more tutors and tutoring business leaders and families becoming closer, developing that relationship.
Educational adventure, I suppose. Yeah. And with the I think like even the careers and professions of the future are changing so rapidly, aren't they? So already, that's probably another good example. I had a request from one family whose son is 15, and they were asking, okay, does he have to go to university, or can we just find like courses, 6-month courses over 2 years, or 3-month courses over 2 years all over the world for him? And those are all influential, rich families who can afford. Well, most of them can afford whatever education they can get for their children, and it's just thinking out of the box, right? So
I totally agree.
Yeah,
I think the role of a tutor will change greatly as well. So watch this space very much. Thank you so much, Yuliya, for coming on to talk about EducAd, to talk about yourself, and obviously for answering that tricky little question at the end. You probably weren't expecting that
answer, but I'll be thinking about it all day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you'd like to send in a re-attempt at that answer, then please do. Which reminds me that any of you listeners out there, you have a very easy way that you can be featured at the end of next week's episode, at the end of every episode really, which is by having a go at answering the questions that we'll be asking next week's guest. So between now and next week, have a go at answering the questions that we'll be asking next week's guest, who is the co-founder of the Different Company, Justin Wise. He's a former pastor, a very, very successful businessman. We can't wait to get him on to the podcast. And these are the questions that we'll be asking him next week. We will be asking him about being different in your marketing. So if we're constantly trying to get noticed and be different, then isn't everything marketing? And the other main question that we'll be asking him is, what do you do once you have got different in your marketing? Once you have differentiated yourself in your marketing, what do you do then? So if you'd like to have a go at answering those questions, just go as ever to speakpipe.com/qualified tutor podcast. That will be in the show notes below. Have a go at send in your answer to those questions, and you'll be featured in the community insights section at the end of next week's episode. Don't forget to review the show if you enjoyed it at ratethispodcast.com/qualified tutor podcast. And finally, a huge thank you to Nudge Education for sponsoring this episode. Nudge are leaders in tutoring in schools, working particularly to eradicate chronic disengagement amongst students up and down the UK. Nudge Education are also lead sponsors of the Love Tutoring Festival too, so check them out at nudgeeducation.co.uk if you'd also like to provide heartfelt outcomes for young people. Thank you very much to Nudge. Thank you very much to Yuliya. Thank you for coming on the show. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did. Thank you, Leda. I did.
Wonderful. As ever, the Love Tutoring Festival, which is what we're building towards in through November, December, and January of next year. We are very, very much excited to be bringing you that as well. You can find out everything at qualifiedtutor.org/love-tutoring-festival. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Qualified Tutor Podcast. Whether you're a regular listener of this podcast or you've just stumbled across it, join the Qualified Tutor podcast group within the Qualified Tutor community to stay up to date with our latest news, offers, workshops, and of course, simply to meet other tutors like you. Whatever your level as a tutor, our training courses will be the next step in your professional development. Visit qualifiedtutor.org/training to find out more about our CPD accredited and Ofqual recognised courses, the first of their kind in the tutoring industry. Your student deserves the best tutor possible. Make that happen today by joining Qualified Tutor.